I watched this, and how do I get involved in this? I would love to compete on roof cutting and assembly. It would be fun because everybody has their own way. I'm assuming that Red Seal is some kind of Canadian standard. Uh, I went to Texas and I just built out in the hot sun and learned as I went. So I don't have a standard. But I want to show everybody. Um, Watch this video. This is a great video. It's called YouTuber versus Real Carpenter Roof Frame Challenge. And he's got quite a few subscribers, and it's had 170,000 views in 1 month. And I'm going to do a react to it, sort of. We'll see if it's entertaining or not for you. But what I want to do is I want to follow the Red Seal guy because he actually built something that looks like a roof. The other guy, he did two angled roofs that you'd have to put a cricket in or some kind of special. I mean, he just artsy wise, it was cool, but it was not practical. So what I did was I went into SketchUp, and I think that guy said he made his a 6. I'm assuming, I don't know. I think I made this a 6, but easy way to find out. But anyways, I'm just going to start talking, and then let's just go through this a little bit. I don't know if this is copyright infringement or what. I don't know how people do reacts.
I'm going to assume 2x8s for ridge, 2x8s for...
Yeah, I don't even know if you can hear that. If you can master the framing square, that's awesome. But if you can master calculations and calculators, it's even faster and better. So they both start off with a 10 foot by 10 foot little 3 foot high square. Okay. Right. Yeah, right here behind him. Right there. So the very first thing, like he's going to do a gable on one end and then a hip roof around. So immediately it would blow the judges' minds. I'd get a sawzall out and I would cut the plate out of this end so that later I could do a balloon framed rake wall, because that's what I show here, and this is how I would do it. Because there's a hinge. As soon as you leave a gable with a little, either a truss or whatever you're putting on there, on top of a plate, you have a hinge that the wall is not as stiff as it could be. So that's like number one. Number two is I don't use Construction Master. I wrote my own software because Construction Master, I don't know how many of you guys can relate to this, but if you're a framer, you're definitely gonna have experienced this. When you calculate your jacks and you know you've cut them perfect and you put them in where they go, and as you're putting plywood in, you're starting to notice that as the jacks get shorter and shorter, they're starting to tilt, and the edge of your plywood is not running in the middle of the jack anymore. The jack is not true. The jack is not square anymore. And it shows itself more as the jacks get shorter, which makes sense. But anyways, I figured out what that was. And even the guy that created BuildCalc reached out and told me that, yeah, they had a problem because Construction Master, BuildCalc, all these, they use a single string for their calculations, like a line. And if you have a run from the face of this ridge down to the outside of the wall, then they calculate to that little string edge. And when you do that, you end up not quite being correct on the hip. And I'll explain that real quick. If you take 3/4 off the ridge, you don't take off 3/4 for the hip. You have to take off the angle, the length of whatever this is. This is on a slope and it's also on an angle. So it's a compound measurement to the center of the hip. And all these other calculators, they go along the face of here and then they just assume the face down here. And it's minimal. I mean, yeah, nobody's going to be like freaking out. You're going to be off a little bit. And there's two different types of framers. There's the ones that say it's good enough, and then there's the ones that say, why is this not the way it should be? And I'm in that second camp. So I figured out how to calculate the thickness of the hips or valleys in the direction that the jack or the rafter intersects with it on the slope as it's climbing or descending. Whatever that length is what you need to subtract off of a center line. And I wrote my own software on an HP 48SX, which is now a HP 50G. But what's even more fun, it took me a while because I'm not really a spreadsheet guy. But let me move this out of here. I came up with this. It's taken me a while. But I'm getting to a point here too. So it's a 10-foot span, and I like to use feet inch 16ths just because it's easy. So 10-0-0. Ridge thickness, this one's 1.5 inches. The wall thickness on this project, they use 2x4. The overhang was from the outside of sheathing to the outside of subfascia. So if you ripped plywood down, you just have to rip it like 15 1/4 so that you don't have it any kind of bulges that mess with you. Low pitch and high pitch. The way I wrote this, it can handle two different pitches. So the main pitch would be what comes up and lands on the ridge from the sides. And then the high pitch would be at the end. And since this is going to be 6 and 12 all the way around, you just put a 6 and a 6. But this could be like 6 and 12 here, 12 and 12 here, and it'll calculate everything correctly. Rafter thickness, rafter type, like these are 2x6. You don't get that very often up here in Pacific Northwest. And on center layouts, I can't stand 2 foot. That just bothers me. I like 16-inch on center. It's classic. It's very strong. And I don't know why he was saying it was kind of hokey having either a single ridge or a double ridge. None of this is a structural ridge. If he was going to do a structural ridge, he'd have to do a gable on both ends so that you could support the ridge in the wall down to the foundation. And putting a hip back here, there's no way to really support that. You could put a collar tie, which I think is what he did. Or, I mean, it's only 10 feet. And I would run a stiff back, and then I would brace up off the stiff back to the bottom of this. And that'll keep the walls from pushing out. That's the whole story right there. You don't want this roof to have a bunch of snow on it and it slowly bows these walls out. And people panic and they go, oh, you can't brace off of that. Well, actually, yeah, you can. If you don't think this 2x6 on edge is strong enough, go with a 2x10. Crown it. Nail it in there. And then let its natural spring hold that up. I've even done beams that would go across, let me think here. You could take this stiff back out and you could cut a beam that, as long as it's sitting, this cut is sitting there. So yeah, you'd have to have a 2x6 wall. You could double these up to like 2x10s, 2x12s, and then they would hold that weight just fine. But this is a small little building. So when you keep that in mind, this is totally acceptable framing. And then I saw that he did the backing bevels. That's the correct way to do it. It's pretty easy. So let me just walk you through this. Once you fill out the areas in green, there's your main run. Here's your main common rafter. I don't remember if he said what his length was, but it's 5'6" and a quarter. For that overhang, there's what you need for your tail along the top edge. I know he said something about his hip not working out right. So, hip run, that's the horizontal. Hip length along the top is 7'4" and 7/8, or 7'4" 14". And jacks. So when you do a hip roof like this and it's the same pitch all the way around, then this end common is one of these over here. All you're doing is just bringing it over here, and that's how you know where to cut the ridge. So then there should be 1, 2, 3, and here are the jacks right here. 1, 2, 3, and then you'll see I added these little red ones. I rarely would ever do this, but if you had the ability to cut that on a chop saw so that it's nice and clean, you could do that just to add more support for the plywood as it comes out here to the hip. But technically, I stop all my jacks where they can sit on the wall and connect to the hip. So this side here is open tail example with lateral restraint blocks with holes drilled in them and a screen mesh. And we call them bird blocks because up here they do this all the time. It's kind of a cheap builder way of doing it. The first row of plywood is really nice AC, so that from the bottom it's nice and clean. It's not an OSB pattern. And the shinglers or roofers, they use shorter nails so that they don't punch a bunch of holes through here. And it just gives you this look. And I've never liked this, but this is what they're used to up here. This is what I'm used to. Closed soffit, and I was going to try to figure out how to do perforations in SketchUp, but man, it would take a long time to punch a bunch of little holes through here. So a lot of times what we do is a linear vent down the middle, hat channel. Some people don't like it. Some people get really weird. Like I had one guy say, well, the wind will come up here, and so I want the hat channel closer to the wall. And then other people are like, well, I like it over here at the end because then it'll flow and it'll come up. And it's like, holy moly, people. Everybody has their own little opinion. It's okay. None of us have to be right. We just have to meet code or exceed it. Man, do I love exceeding code. So here's the, when it's, what do you call this, soffit, and you got venting in it, then it's just going to come up over these blocks. You don't have to worry about bugs because your screen venting in the soffit takes care of that. And then this would go up. And, you know, I've never seen a vented hip, like a ridge cap on a hip. So maybe none of these even need anything, but just do it anyways, just in case somebody comes up with a new way of doing something, then what you have here is correct. But for sure, and let's turn on the roof plywood here real quick. I always like to cut this back about 1.5 inches. And then I like to have blocking, especially up here where they require, like the builder goes, no, I want it 2 feet on center. Well, I hate walking on the edge of this if it's not supported. So flat blocking, the convection venting can come out through the ridge vent. Everything's good. I had one guy tell me he wanted his overhang vented. And I was like, yeah, but that's outside. There's no... You're not load balancing the temperature between the house and the outside in the attic. This is just all outside. You don't need to do that. But everybody has an idea of what they want. Here's a typical example of how we used to do the quick returns. And a lot of times we wouldn't even run a 2x4. We'd rip it down the middle and then lay these blocks flat and extend this past and then build this so that we could put, you know, like 1x12, or they never had 5/4 down there in the South. They always was 3/4. Stiff back, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the balloon frame wall. And here's another thing. There's a couple ways you can do this. I found a really quick way to notch these so that I could nail in a couple nails here and then come up from underneath. Yeah, I like doing that. And shoot one in there. And then when you run your sheathing, you've got a really solid surface. And I've had people complain like, oh, that's too much work, too many cuts. So there is another way you can do this. You can take this outside rafter and move it over so that you have a 3.5, like your layout starts 3.5 over. And then you just run these blocks up with the outside rafter being right here instead of over here. And you don't have to notch any of these out. You just cut them square to not stick out of the roof. But I don't know. I like the way I do it. And I'm not in any race with anybody because when I get hired to do it the way I like to do it, and everybody's happy. But I'm not here to change anybody. You guys want to do it your way, do it your way. Just go. Always set yourself high goals and standards, and then just go meet them. Go do it. So here's how we do the let-in outriggers. You measure up from the outside of here, and you go up 48 inches to the center of this. And then if this was a bigger building, you would 48 inches up and 48 inches up. And that way your plywood lands right on that nailer. Just kind of helps things out, especially out here. In some rare instances, it's better to start from the top down. You know, you measure up, snap some lines, and start 4 feet down. Because you don't want to build something where it's 48 inches and then it's like 12 inches at the top. Because that's just going to be so weak. You're going to have to block all the seams. And it's just extra headache. So think about that as you're working. What I was going to show here was he laid out his hip, the Red Seal guy. And I'm going to see if I can do this. I want to show you how I've always done it. Let's see if I can rotate. I wonder if I can rotate this. Let's go there. And then let's do Q. Come down here. Oh, yes. Okay, so when you look over on the left, look under hip, it's going to give an angle. The hip angle, 35.26. All right, so there's the hip. Now, what you want to do when you're laying out your hip, this is going to be the top of the hip and this is going to be the bottom. And what you do is you just, if the edge is good and it's not all boogered up, you just hook your tape on here and you measure down. Let's see, what is the hip length? 7, 4, and 14. So I'm going to go M plus. I'll follow this angle and I'm going to go 7'4" and 7/8. Okay. So now what you do is perpendicular to this line. I'm going to have to do this some strange way. Maybe I can do a circle. Let me try that. I need a circle that has a radius of 1.5. 1.5. Okay. Well, that's going to get weird. G. Oh, I grabbed. Okay, hold on. Explode. It grabbed this line. Okay, I think I can do this. So I've got both those lines, and what I'm going to do is go move plus, and I can't move it 1.5 inches this way. What I need to do is move it. It's going to be a little more than 1.5 inches. I can't get it to snap. Well, anyways, so what you do, I was hoping I could just draw a line right along the edge of the circle. This just sucks. All right, here we go. I'm just going to get close, and then I'll verbally explain what it is. What you're trying to do is, you know that your hip is 1.5 inches thick on this one, unless you're using LVL or something. You're going to right about there. So you've made 2 lines. I'm going to get rid of this circle. I just needed it to get me 1.5 inches apart. So you've hooked from here to here, 7'4" and 7/8. You come back and you pull horizontally or perpendicularly 1.5 inches, make a mark, draw that one, come down, do the same thing, 1.5 inches, draw that one. So now you have these 4 lines. And if you have a saw with the blade on the right, not a worm drive, but the opposite, then you would cut on the line this direction. I wish SketchUp would give me arrows easy. But anyways, you go away from you this way. Then you turn it around and you come back and you ride on the same side of the line here. And it makes the diamond cut at the top. Then you come down here and you cut this way first, down this way. Then you come over to the board and you go this way and you make that diamond cut there. And if, for example, you want to have an actual bird's mouth down here, then in the center of these two, you would measure down the height of the rafter hap. Wherever that is, you're going to go perpendicular again across, and you're going to make a bird's mouth right here, right in the middle of these two, because that's where the diamond cut is, and that diamond cut is the outside corner of the framing. And then you could just leave all this long for now. A lot of times what I'll do is I will make sure it doesn't stick down too far, and I'll just rip this all the way down and let it go wild. Or I've probably got a hip tail in here somewhere. I don't remember. I know I've got the tails for the rafters, like right here. But if you want and you don't want to, I don't know. I'm looking. Maybe I don't. It's not hard to make, though. It's just math. But yeah, you could run all your rafters, run a string or eyeball down the outside of the tails, make a mark on this side, transfer it across, make a mark, and then cut another diamond cut, which I call it a diamond cut, but the only reason I call it that is it's that right here, that cut right there. So yeah, this was all calculated, and it sits right there on the corner. It's kind of cool. So yeah, this video, I watched these guys, and this is how I did it back in 1989, 1990. It just seems slow. So I was one of those guys that said, hey, you know what? There's got to be a faster way. And then I had that calculator when I was going to college, and I couldn't afford a construction master, but the guy I worked with had one. And I would compare what I could do. Let me just do this. Let's see if I can bring that up. So this is the calculator I use now. I don't have any equations stuck in here yet. I wonder what A is. Oh, never mind. Yeah, I haven't written any equations here because I don't think it stores the equation. So it's a lot of work to manually type it in. But yeah, I would love to go to this contest. And the first thing I would do is I'd say, what do you want? And then they can tell me any kind of crazy thing. And I know the span, and I know what the ridge is, and I know what the hips are, and I know what the rafters are because they're all right here. So then you just run the equations through the calculator and write it all down on a board. And I would start cutting the entire roof before any of this craziness, because you can calculate everything on a building. You don't have to wait and measure. You never have to measure. We used to do that. We used to run, like if this was olden days, we'd run a 6 and 12, put a seat cut line on it and put the level on it and get it up to a certain height and brace it, and then bring the other one from the other side, and they would crisscross in the middle, and that's where we would scribe them, and then we would take off half the ridge off both of them, and that would be our patterns for the main commons. And it was like, man, you're up on a 2-story building in the heat of summer in Texas. No fun, man. So yeah, this kind of thing, I drew this in 90 minutes, this thing. But the calculation, you saw how fast that was. I could change any of these numbers. I could say, you know what, we're going to go with LVL hips. They just happen to have LVL. And I want you to watch, let's see, look at the jacks. Watch these jacks right here. Watch them change as soon as I hit enter. See that? They all changed a little bit. Because it adjusted the thickness of the ridge, or the hip, which changed the length of the jacks. So, and that was only what, 4/16, so a quarter inch. It made a quarter inch difference, just changing that. If I go with a 2x8 instead of a 2x6, so that I don't have to have any purlin bracing, that's going to change the height above plate and the height for the hip. Here's the backing angle. So what he did when he ripped those, that's 18.43 degrees that you, where's my hip? So if you have a blade on the right, you would set it right here, and you would align the blade up to cut down the middle, a little bit off to the right of the cut, just so you're not, making it too, you want 3/4 left. So do what you got to do to make that happen. In fact, I use a little baby vice grip sometimes. If I've got enough room, I'll clamp it onto the base of my saw, and then I'll just ride it right along the wood. But you would drive down this way, then you would turn around and come back this way. So if you had the opposite type saw with the blade on the left and it tilts towards you instead of tilting away from you, you just do that in reverse. You do the top edge, you'd cut that off, then you got to flip the board over and come back the other way, because you're cutting off. You're cutting up. Well, I guess you know what you could do? You could probably start down here coming this way and cut the bottom. And the only reason I'm suggesting cutting the bottom first is it leaves the top all the way out to the edge, so that you're not fighting tipping off that bevel cut. But that's how it works, man. So yeah, my React video is kind of going to have not a whole lot, but I just want to, where did I see some other stuff that was, here's what I can't believe. These guys were given 4 hours to do this. Yeah. That's too much weight. I can cut all day long if the saw is light. And if you're going to have a big heavy saw, I don't know. I can go faster than most guys that use the worm drive. But that's an ego thing. Unless you're cutting thick timbers, you don't really need that much torque. But what I like is the Makita Mag MG 50 something, 5,000 something. It has a light on it, and so as you're cutting, it helps blows the sawdust out of the way, but then you see where you're cutting with the light. So that was a winner for me. I used to use that Milwaukee corded one. It got stolen along with my my AVT Makita Sawzall. Never take a break, and trust your coworkers to look after your stuff. But anyways, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. This is how, it would just be so much fun. I can only imagine. See, I don't see a chop saw. I have a chop saw in my truck right now. I set up a sliding compound miter saw, and I've been mocked down in the South. People are like, you don't need that. I can do everything with a skill saw. But I got up here to the Pacific Northwest, and the only way you distinguish yourself is if your framing's cleaner and tighter and more accurate, less callbacks. And I loved it. So like every one of these blocks, this block here, you might think it's 14.5. Negatory, Ghost Rider. 14 and 7/16, 14 and 7/16, 14 and 7/16. The reason why you do 7/16 is half the time these 1.5 inches are maybe a 32nd fatter, or even a 16th fatter than 1.5 inches. You get just random stuff. Sometimes it's It comes wet, and so it's really fat, or sometimes it's just milled, not perfect. So you don't want to just start going, well, mathematically, 16 minus an inch and a half is 14 and a half. And then you start putting 20 or 30 of these in. And after a while, you're not in the layout anymore because you've mechanically made these get forced out of layout. What else? Oh yeah, there's ways to lay out the hip. I had to do that. You know what? I need to send a link here. Let me just try something real quick. See if I can get to it. Where would that be? Right here. We're gonna go look at some stuff I've done. Um, this here. So this is the SketchUp. I did this SketchUp after I actually built this thing, and this was during the forest fires a couple years back. Um, and this is where I really fell in love with SketchUp because I drew everything exactly as it would be because I didn't know SketchUp could do this. I thought SketchUp was just, primary colors and weird shapes, but you can make SketchUp whatever you want. And so I remodeled this whole thing, and this is how I cut the roof. This is AutoCAD, and you just calculate like the building actually turned out to be a quarter inch less than 24 feet. And there are people out there that would say, oh, it's close enough, 24 feet. Well, if I know before I'm going to cut exactly what the span is, then I'm going to exactly calculate to match that. And the guys tried to make it match, um, but everything was plumb and level, so it was just out by a quarter inch. So we made it exact because the more exact you do, the more things self true. Um, this was an interesting little building. It's we got the ridge engineered by the lumber company. It's a 3.5 by 18 glulam, and it holds 4 valleys and 2 ridges. So it's a ridge in one direction, and then the other ridges were like 2 by 12. And when I first laid out the very first valley, I made the mistake right here. You can see I used a hip angle, but it's not. It's the actual plumb cut angle. So once they started shooting them in, and they were asking me, "Hey, how this line doesn't work? What are we doing?" So I told them just to run along the top and plane that into the center of the valley. And that's how you're supposed to do that. And then once I figured out my mistake, then all the rest of them, I drew the line. I don't know if you can see it right there at the mouse, but I got it all correct. And it was nice. I was like, hey, how are they fitting? And they were like, oh, it's perfect. Once I got the lines fixed and they lined up with the line and the valley was straight, then they were the right amount of height over the top of the valley so that it would plane down into it. And I will do this for anybody that wants it. This is kind of what I do. I'm not really super creative with colors and textures, but if you need to know how to frame it, I got you. So yeah, this was the only sad thing about this whole project was they came in and they went up 9 feet and then they joisted across and sheetrocked it. And it blew me away. I was thinking, these are 2x8s. You got plenty of space. You could close cell foam this thing and leave it as a cathedral and talk about an awesome feeling. But no, they wanted it flat. So that's what happened. And here's what I'm talking about. When you cut these valleys, you hook on the top, and I don't know if I have a video. I think I do have a video. Okay, we're gonna get out of this because there's just too much crazy. Um, but yeah, the valleys laid them out so the guys had easy. It was easier for them. I'm about to have to do another one of these set of stairs. I think. Let me just go see here. Where did I have that? Well, anyways, we built a deck and we did outside stairs. So this will be like about the fifth or sixth one of these I've done. And here's what was cool about this one. A guy in England invented this really cool roof tool, and I reached out to him and I bought his version, and it was in metric. It was all degrees. It wasn't like 4 and 12, 5 and 12. It was all degrees. And it's cool. I mean, once you kind of get used to how it works, it's pretty cool. But I needed this piece here to be longer because it's really cool as a stair layout tool also. But so then he made an American version, put the U.S. flag on it, but then he said proudly made in the U.K. And I hope he gets somehow some traction with Home Depot or Lowe's because it is a very cool tool. It's heavy duty aluminum. Um, I don't remember his website. It's been a while. It was like way back before COVID even. But always have a chop saw. What else? Yeah, we built these stairs before the floor system was put in. Um, I like doing rake walls like this only because I like to cut all the. I don't like. So in the olden days, we would snap everything out on the slab and then measure that and then cut the pieces and then put it together and stand it up. Well, however accurate you are with snapping lines is how accurate your wall's going to be. And yes, there is some tolerance in framing. You can put up stuff that's not quite square, not quite right, and you're good to go. But if you want to be meticulous and you want to pre-cut everything exact, then draw it exact. You know the studs are inch and a half thick. You know how you're going to lay this out with the plywood, so you know where to put them, and you know what the angles are. This is 12 and 12. And so you just draw everything and extend it up to the bottom of the plates and then dimension them. And it works. The more accurate you are, the faster you go on the ground. I show up with a laminated sheet and spend, I don't know, while guys are doing things, spend an hour cutting all those pieces and labeling them. And then they just put it together and people walk by and go, man, wow, look at that. Well, yeah. Yeah, I had to get rid of this fence. I had a nasty old fence. I think here's a good picture. That's how it was, and this is how it is. Except our new dogs chew the crap. They bow up on the neighbors and like burr, 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 and she's chewed a lot of the inside of these vertical cedar. But yeah, I like it. Sergio did the landscaping, and he had a guy that set all my posts. I drilled all the holes with a auger from Home Depot, one of those trailer augers. Man, oh, that's so easy. And then they set them and glued them. So, yep. So here's a Lindell Cedar home up on Lake Samish, and they wanted extra windows, and so we figured out how to do that, and then run it by the engineer. If you draw it exactly, you're going to hear me say this again. You draw it precisely, it builds precisely. Here you go. This rake wall, all the weird little pieces that have to go into there to match this, and you got to leave a hole for this beam right here, this blue thing. Draw it correctly, build it correctly. It's funny, now I've got different bags. I've got upholstery system and Occidental, and the Occidental started getting heavy because it's beautiful, man. It's leather and it's everything. But when I first bought my chop saw, this came in the box for free, and this lasted my entire 20-year framing career. And then it just started falling apart. So, yep, I didn't make a lot of money, so I had to make free work, and free. This was good. My best spud. Oh yeah, so here's where SketchUp is amazing. So you want to do a detail? Here's a detail that I did in SketchUp, and then I imported into Chief because Chief Architect has notes capability, and I would rather read over here because look at like number 2. Where's number 2 hiding out? Right here? Okay, so number 2, frame platform at elevation of corresponding riser height. Can you imagine if all this text was on a leader line pointing to number 2? Do you know how much text would be out here distracting? Whereas here, if you have a question, you go find what it is. Number 6, what's that? Oh, it's a ledger. Okay. So that's kind of why I like SketchUp. And then SketchUp just gets crazy. I've built one of these this way, and it's 2x12s, and you just cut a curve radius in it. And the only difference I do than most people is I cut an octagon post up here. I take a 4x4 and I cut it to where it's equal sides octagon, so it's about 1.5 inches each side. And that way, then I have a solid thing to nail everything to, and it sticks up, and I can, brace it off and hold it. But this other builder came along and said, "Oh, we don't do that anymore. We just go find an old used satellite dish, like one of them big ones, and they just stick it up there and mud it because it already comes with holes." So there you go. There's a freebie. Um, I did. This is a real ceiling. Did this in my best man's office, and once it was all said and done, it looked amazing. What else? What else? What else? I've done a lot of these ellipses. Had a math professor from Rice University, and he said, "We'd like to have an ellipse, not an oval, not a circle, but an ellipse. Do you know what an ellipse is?" I said, "Yeah, you put the 2 focal points down, and you take your string and you go around both focal points, and you come out to the edge where, let's say, it's 10 feet by 4 feet, and you just keep tension so it's like a triangle, and it's an always changing triangle with your pencil in there, and you go all the way around, and that's how that's done." This is cool. You should go see this guy, Jackass Sawhorse. Awesome framer, swears by these. I haven't built one yet, but that's pretty sweet. But just look at what SketchUp can do. You know, I'm trying to figure out how to make the job site trailer look better and design what I want. And you can do a lot of modeling in SketchUp, and it doesn't cost you any materials if you want to change your mind. So that's that. Feel free to reach out if you have a challenging or interesting project. I'd love to help. Some things I just help. Other things, if it's going to make you money, you're going to pay. But if it's just, sometimes we just help each other. All right. Oh, and if you want to learn anything about, let's see here. If I can just log in real quick. Dan Bowman and his Pro Academy. He's peeking over the edge there. Dan is such a focused professional, and he's very laid back about his teaching styles. And he's just, man, when you join his academy, if first he has 2 days a month where he has 4 90-minute sessions that are you can sit in, and if you're smart, you'll send him a problem a day or two ahead of time so he has time to figure it out. But man, you could send it to him live, and he'll just figure out your problem and fix it. But he's got a ton of videos from previous courses, and just any question you have, chances are you're going to figure it out. So Dan's the man. And John works with him, John Schrader. And between the two of them, man, they know so much about Chief. And then for SketchUp, Madiq Bim. Check him out. Yep, we've hit 45 minutes. It is time to turn this off and publish it. But I just wanted to share that I would love to, you know what? I'll help that DIY guy. We'll have somebody pick a roof style. I'll calculate everything, and then he can just either cut it, or I'll cut it and he can put it together, and we will smoke anybody. 4 hours? Are you kidding me? I could do all this in 4 hours. It just seemed like 4 hours was a lot of time to do such a small little thing. It's not all that complicated. All right. Y'all take care.